Have you ever gone through a time in your life when it felt like everything was falling apart? When no matter how hard you tried, life forced you to slow down, let go, or completely reinvent yourself? Those are the kinds of moments when Saturn and Pluto are at work. In astrology, Saturn and Pluto are known as the great teachers, but they don't teach with gentle lessons. They teach with reality checks, with breakdowns, with deep transformation. Saturn forces us to grow up, while Pluto forces us to shed our skin and face the truth. And while these transits can feel like some of the hardest times of our lives, they're also the ones that shape us the most. They strip away illusions, they test our resilience, and they prepare us for the next chapter of our evolution. In this video, we're going to dive deep into Saturn and Pluto, how they work, the lessons they bring, and how you can navigate their challenges without losing yourself in the process. By the end of this, you'll not only understand these planets on a much deeper level, but you'll also see how some of your hardest life experiences may have been setting you up for your greatest breakthroughs. Let's start with Saturn. Saturn is often called the taskmaster or the lord of karma in astrology. And honestly, that reputation is pretty accurate. When Saturn shows up in your life through a major transit, you can feel it. It's that voice that says, it's time to grow up, it's time to face reality, no shortcuts. The energy of Saturn is about structure, responsibility, discipline, and time. Think of Saturn as the planet that builds foundations, but it only does so through trial, patience, and persistence. Wherever Saturn is in your chart, that's the area of life where you'll be tested, where you'll be forced to mature, and where rewards only come after effort. It's not about instant gratification, it's about long-term stability. Now, the most famous example of Saturn's influence is the Saturn return. This happens roughly every 29 years when Saturn comes back to the same place it was when you were born. The first Saturn return happens around age 28 to 30, and for many people, this period feels like a turning point, sometimes even like a crisis. Maybe it's a career shakeup, maybe a relationship ends or a new one begins that changes your path. Maybe it's the moment when you realize the life you've been living doesn't match the person you're becoming. But the thing about Saturn is, it doesn't just take things away. It removes what's not built to last so you can create something stronger. Saturn asks, are you living with integrity? Are you building a life that can stand the test of time? When Saturn transits, it often feels heavy, like walls closing in. You might feel more pressure, more limitations, more responsibility, and that's not easy. But Saturn is shaping you into someone who can handle more, who can carry more, who can step into the next level of maturity. Let's take an example. Saturn crossing your mid-heaven, which rules career and public image. This transit often brings career tests. Maybe you're pushed into a leadership role that feels overwhelming, or maybe you realize the path you've chosen isn't aligned with who you are anymore. It can feel like a wall, but in reality, it's Saturn asking you to take ownership of your true path. Another example, Saturn squaring your moon. That can bring emotional lessons. You may feel isolated or like your support system is being tested, but ultimately, Saturn here is teaching emotional maturity, how to care for yourself without relying too heavily on external validation. The bottom line is this: Saturn isn't here to punish you. Saturn is here to prepare you. It's here to remind you that lasting success, lasting love, lasting self-respect, all of that comes when you build on solid ground. So yes, Saturn can feel heavy, strict, and even cold at times. But if you embrace the lessons instead of resisting them, Saturn becomes one of the most rewarding teachers in astrology. It gives you strength, wisdom, and resilience that nothing can take away. Now, let's talk about Pluto. If Saturn is the planet that teaches you discipline through structure and limits, Pluto is the planet that teaches you transformation through destruction and rebirth. Pluto represents the underworld, It rules over power, control, shadow work, death, and regeneration. When Pluto makes a strong transit to your chart, life can feel like it's pulling the rug out from under you, but always for a reason. Where Saturn whispers, grow up, Pluto whispers, let go, or I'll take it from you. Pluto's energy is not subtle. These are the transits that shake you to your core. They bring up what's been buried, fears, secrets, unresolved trauma, unhealthy attachments. Whatever you've been avoiding, Pluto drags into the light. And here's the thing, it doesn't do this to be cruel. Pluto's role is to strip away everything false, everything toxic, everything you've outgrown. It's the planet of deep purification. After Pluto moves through, you're not the same person and you're not meant to be. Think about the symbolism of the phoenix. It burns down to ashes, but it's only through that fire that it rises stronger and more radiant than before. Let's look at some examples. Pluto conjunct Venus. This is one of the most intense transits for relationships. It can bring obsessive connections, power struggles, or a complete overhaul of how you approach love and intimacy. You might lose a relationship or find yourself in one that completely transforms you, for better or worse, but ultimately it forces you to confront your values and attachments. Pluto square the sun. This one can feel like an identity crisis. It can strip away the version of yourself you've been clinging to so you can step into a more authentic and powerful version of who you are. Yes, it can feel like an ego death, but ego deaths are often what allow true growth to happen. Pluto doesn't move fast. Its transits last years. That's why the changes feel so profound. You can't rush through them, you have to live them, and usually you don't realize how much you've transformed until you look back later and realize you're not the same person who started that journey. Pluto also operates collectively. When Pluto enters a new sign, society itself goes through transformation. For example, Pluto's recent shift into Aquarius marks a time of radical change in technology, power structures, and collective systems. We're seeing old structures crumble while new ones are being born. It's uncomfortable, but necessary. Pluto asks, will you surrender to transformation? The lesson of Pluto is that the more you resist, the harder it feels. But when you surrender, when you allow yourself to let go of what's dead weight, Pluto gives you incredible power. It strips you down to your core truth. And once Pluto's finished with you, you're unshakable. You've faced the underworld and come back stronger. So we've looked at Saturn and Pluto individually, but what happens when we put them side by side? In many ways, these two planets are like very different teachers in the school of life. Saturn is the stern professor. It's the one who hands you the syllabus, piles on the work, and expects you to show up every single day prepared. There are no shortcuts with Saturn. If you study, if you stay disciplined, you pass the class and you walk away with skills that last a lifetime. Pluto, on the other hand, is not that kind of teacher. Pluto is the one who throws you into the deep end of the pool and says, sink or swim. There are no instructions, no syllabus, no rules. The only way out is through. And when you finally make it out, you're never the same. Saturn tests your endurance. Pluto tests your soul. Saturn asks, can you take responsibility? Can you commit? Can you do the work day in and day out? Pluto asks, can you face the truth? Can you let go of what's dying even when it feels impossible? Saturn is gradual. It works slowly, building pressure over time. Think of it like the weight of gravity, slowly shaping a mountain. Pluto is eruptive. It's like a volcanic explosion that wipes out everything in its path, only to create new fertile ground afterward. Now, here's the interesting part. Both planets are actually aiming for the same thing: growth, evolution, strength, but they use opposite methods to get you there. Saturn builds through consistency. Pluto rebuilds through destruction. Saturn teaches through structure. Pluto teaches through surrender. Saturn is about external authority, rules, laws, obligations. Pluto is about inner authority, power, truth, authenticity. And in your life, you'll experience both. Sometimes you'll feel Saturn's heavy hand pushing you to take responsibility and put in the work. Other times you'll feel Pluto's deep pull forcing you to transform from the inside out. Neither planet is easy, but both are essential. Saturn shapes your backbone, Pluto shapes your soul. And when you've faced both, you come out with a kind of wisdom and resilience that no one can take away. Now, let's bring this down to Earth because it's one thing to talk about Saturn and Pluto in theory, but it's another to really feel them moving through your life. I want to walk you through some examples of what these transits can look like. And as you listen, you might even recognize some of your own experiences. Let's start with Saturn. Saturn square the moon. This transit often feels like an emotional winter. You may feel isolated, unsupported, or like no one really understands you. Family dynamics can feel heavy. Maybe you're carrying responsibilities for others, or you're realizing old patterns of dependency aren't working anymore. At first, it can feel lonely, but in the end, this transit teaches you how to rely on yourself emotionally. It strengthens your inner foundation. Saturn conjunct the midheaven. This is a big career transit. It's when Saturn shines a spotlight on your ambitions and says, are you walking the path you're meant to? For some people, this is the moment when they're tested in leadership roles or when a career shift happens. Maybe you face setbacks that feel discouraging, but long term, this is a transit that builds your reputation. It's like Saturn carving your legacy brick by brick. Now let's move to Pluto. Pluto conjunct Venus. This one transforms relationships at the deepest level. Maybe a relationship ends suddenly, leaving you raw and exposed. Or maybe you enter a relationship that feels magnetic, consuming, even obsessive. Either way, your approach to love and intimacy is never the same afterward. Pluto forces you to confront your values, your attachments, and what you're willing to give or receive in love. Pluto square the sun. This is a true identity crisis transit. It can feel like everything you thought you knew about yourself is being stripped away. Old identities, the roles you've played, the masks you've worn, stop working. You're forced to let go of who you thought you were so you can step into who you're meant to become. It's painful, but it's powerful. The thing with both Saturn and Pluto is that you don't always realize what they were teaching you until afterward. While you're in it, it can feel like pure struggle, but when you look back, you often see that was the time I grew the most. That was the time I found out what I was really made of. If you're watching this right now, I want you to think back on your own life. What was happening around age 29 or 30? That's your Saturn return. Did you have to make big choices? Did certain doors close so new ones could open? And with Pluto, think about the years when life felt like a complete transformation, when you were forced to let go of something, or when your identity, relationships, or career completely shifted. Chances are Pluto was at play. I encourage you to actually look at your chart and find where Saturn and Pluto are making transits right now. Journal about it. Write down what feels heavy, what feels transformative, and ask yourself, what lesson might this planet be teaching me? Because when you start to recognize the pattern, the pain feels less random and the growth feels more intentional. So, why do Saturn and Pluto put us through all of this? Why the tests, the breakdowns, the heavy lessons? The answer is evolution. These planets don't just move through your chart to make life difficult. They show up to prepare you to strip away what's false, to strengthen what's weak, and to reveal the parts of you that are unbreakable. Saturn's purpose is to make you resilient, to show you that success, stability, and mastery don't come overnight. They come from patience, discipline, and showing up when it's hard. Saturn asks you to commit to your path, not just for today, but for the long run. Pluto's purpose is to make you fearless, to show you that even when everything falls apart, you can rebuild. Pluto reminds you that endings are not the end. They're the beginning of something new, something more authentic, something that can't be taken from you. Together, Saturn and Pluto act like guardians at the gates of transformation. Saturn shapes your backbone, Pluto shapes your soul. One builds you from the outside in, the other rebuilds you from the inside out. Think about some of the greatest challenges in your own life, the heartbreaks, the losses, the setbacks. Chances are those moments also shaped your strength, your compassion, your clarity. Without them, you wouldn't be who you are now. And it's not just personal. These planets also move collectively. For example, Saturn is currently in Pisces, teaching us lessons about boundaries, spirituality, and compassion in a world that often feels chaotic. Meanwhile, Pluto has just entered Aquarius, ushering in a collective transformation around technology, community, and power structures. So when you feel the weight of these transits, you're not alone. Entire generations are moving through similar lessons. Saturn and Pluto don't just change individuals, they reshape societies. And that's the deeper purpose, evolution, both personal and collective. These planets strip us down so that we, as individuals and as a collective, can rise stronger, clearer, and more aligned with our true path. So, after everything we've explored about Saturn and Pluto, the big question becomes, how do you actually navigate these intense transits in real life? First, accept the timing. These are not quick lessons. Saturn often works in 3-year cycles, and Pluto can work in decades. If you expect instant results, you'll only frustrate yourself. Trust that the process unfolds in phases: breakdown, rebuilding, integration. Second, don't resist the lesson. What Saturn and Pluto bring up is unavoidable. The more you fight against it, the harder it feels. But when you lean into the lesson, whether it's discipline, letting go, or facing your shadow, you start moving with the current instead of against it. Third, build practices that anchor you. During Saturn transits, consistency is your friend. Routines, boundaries, healthy structure. During Pluto transits, self awareness is your lifeline. Journaling, therapy, spiritual work. These tools help you process instead of getting lost in the chaos. Fourth, find support. Saturn and Pluto can feel isolating, but you don't have to go through them alone. Mentors, therapists, trusted friends, or even astrology itself can provide perspective. Sometimes just knowing what's happening in the sky can make you realize, I'm not broken, I'm being transformed. And finally, remember, you are not meant to come out of these transits the same person. The version of you that survives Saturn and Pluto is wiser, stronger, and more authentic. These are not planets that take without giving. They clear the way so that something truer, more powerful, and more aligned with your soul can rise. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this video gave you clarity, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might be going through their own Saturn or Pluto season. And remember, the hardest chapters of your story are often the ones that turn you into the person you were always meant to be.